My dear viewers, beginning today is the official Alliteration Gaming Patreon and channel members. Throughout my Patreon, we've got quite a few tiers you can check out in order to gain special perks and even commission videos that you'd like to see me upload onto the channel. Every tier includes a shout out on my supporter card at the beginning of all of my videos, along with the benefits of the tier itself. Following that, you can now also join the Alliteration Nation by becoming a channel member on the YouTube side of things. Pledging your subscription here as a member of the channel is going to grant you the same shout out on my supporter card as all the Patreon tiers do, as well as access to the members only channel on my Discord. You'll gain a member badge that will level up as you stay subscribed and access to my exclusive emotes when I stream on YouTube. If you're interested in checking out the Patreon, I'm going to have the link in the description and in the pinned comment down below, as well as the link to my Discord should you want to join that as well. And if you want to become a channel member, the big, beautiful join button is front and center on my homepage right here. And if you do decide to support the channel in any way whatsoever, know that I am unimaginably grateful, and I can't wait to provide you with even more top-notch content at my trademark top speed. Additionally, it's time for the return of the referral code. If you're new here and you're just getting into the game, you've got to make an account on the Universus Gaming Network. When you're signing up, you can use my exclusive referral code Alliteration to let Jasco know that I brought you on board, which directly supports me and my work. Having an account on the UGN site is going to allow you to sign up for tournaments, participate in events, locate stores that support the game near you, and much, much more. Playing in events and or mailing in pack wrappers is actually going to accrue loyalty points onto your account, which you'll then be able to redeem for exclusive promo cards in the mail for absolutely free. An account on here is an integral part of playing this game, so make sure you sign up and you use my code Alliteration to help me continue doing what I love. I would really appreciate the support. You guys absolutely killed it on the last one with all of the signups, and I am really excited to run it back with you all. Now, let's get on to the video. Good evening, my dear viewers. Welcome to another Alliteration gaming video. My name's Levi, and today we are going to be ranking every single ultra rare in the newest set of the My Hero Academia collectible card game set for the League of Villains. This is something I've been doing dating all the way back to set 1 and just kind of taking all of the ultra rares, putting them in a little tier list format and simply ranking them against each other based on a few things. We're going to be ranking them not only on their standalone power level, but also compared to each other, and also on their versatility and essentially their accessibility, how many decks can actually utilize what they're doing, is it limited to certain archetypes, certain characters, that type of stuff. And as always, with any tier list whatsoever or any kind of ranking video, these are just going to be my opinions. The set has only just come out, and I know that I, alongside many other players out there, have simply not gotten nearly enough games in just yet to fully understand the true value and true quality of these cards. Some might be way better than we think, some might be way worse than we think. It's really hard to tell, so these are kind of just mostly my first impressions and just really what cards that I think we're going to be seeing a lot of in the coming days. So if you look at our tier list itself, we've got 5 different tiers here. S tier, these are the staples. These are the cards that simply put are going to go into any deck on any of those symbols, on any character whatsoever, because they're just that generically good. After that is the A tier, is the high competitive play. These are just cards that I think we'll see registered in quite a handful of competitive decks going into the meta. They're really strong, solid cards on their own or in any strong deck as well. B tier, right in the middle, is just me like the decent tech tier. These are cards that I think that some decks will play, not all of them will play them. They're going to fetch adequate value no matter where their home is, but overall they're not going to be the most impactful things inside of your deck. After that is the C tier. This is the underplayed tier. This is where most of the really niche cards are going to go, cards that are pretty solid overall, but are just not going to see play because there's better options on those symbols, or maybe they're only usable in certain characters, stuff like that. They're okay cards, but you're just not going to see much of them. And then lastly, the D tier. These are the very rarely played cards. These are going to be the very underwhelming cards. You are not going to see these cards in decks very often. They are simply put just okay at what they do, very underwhelming and or just highly restrictive in what they do. So with all of that being said, let's just get right into it. And the first one is going to be Dobby's Ultra Rare Blue Flame Flicker. I think this card card actually goes straight into the C tier. This card is very okay if you're Dobby. If you're Dobby, you're gonna absolutely adore this card. It gets fast for doing what you do, and you get free momentum for doing what you do, and that's playing Cremation. If you're not Dobby and you're not playing Cremation 24/7 and you're not removing tons of cards, this card just does not do a whole lot for you. Sure, there are a lot of actions in the game that don't clear themselves from the card pool so that you can make use of this ability, but they're pretty few and far between. They're not the best on their own, and I mean, when you put in this card, it does make them a little bit better, but at that point, how many card slots are you really dedicating to all of this, and is it just better or worth it compared to other things that you could be doing? If we were just judging this based on how good it is in Dobby, it'd be like way up here, man. But I just think that enough people will be able to use this card, and you have to devote really hardcore to it for really a pretty mediocre payoff once you factor everything in. Next is going to be Toga 2's ultra rare, and that's Dual Needle Lunge. This card I think is very good. I'm putting this card all the way in the A tier. I think we're going to see this card registered a ton. This card is going to find home in a ton of different decks. It's very generically usable by anyone. It's essentially Crow and Frog Takedown in a few ways. It's pay 3 health for Crow and Frog Takedown, and there's going to be a ton of decks that are just always down to do that. It is a weapon for those particular decks, especially under the life and death symbols. It's got EX, it's got a nice low block, it's got really cool applications for messing up the top card of your rival's deck at certain situations. It's just a very solid card all around, and I think we're going to see a lot of Dual Needle Lunge. Also, it's got Toga's face on it, so people are just going to play it. Next up, we're looking at Kurogiri's ultra rare Dignified Display. I think this card is pretty good. I'm gonna put it right in the middle in the B tier. I think this card's okay. It is not the most terrifying echo attack in the world. Like, it is a 3 mid for 4 twice, and there's nothing super horrifying about that, but the fact that you get to block with it and pick up a card, and it gets to clear itself, and it's a flash, like, it's got enough good things to make me want to put this in my deck. I'm never gonna be blown away when I play it, but I'm gonna play it and feel pretty good about what it is doing for what it is. Very decent card. Next up, we're looking at Moonfish's ultra rare Razor Deluge, and I think this card is actually quite solid. I'm going to put this card also in the middle with the B tier. It does have a very real condition that you have to be able to clear your card pool, but we've got the air symbol on us, which means that a ton of decks are going to be able to do that, and then even certain void characters like Eraserhead and Stain 2 can always clear the card pool. Season the Advantage is on 2 of these symbols and clears the card pool. There are a lot more ways to trigger this card than you really think, and you effectively get Tongue Whip without as potent the damage for being able to play and activate this card inside your deck. It's got a nice low block as well, and some very relevant keywords in ranged and weapon. Next up, we're looking at Double Overhead Hammer Fist. This is Muscular's ultra rare. I'm gonna put this card quite down here in the C tier. Once again, if you're Muscular, you're gonna love this card. Otherwise, even if you're a character that can put a bunch of damage on things, like if you can put like 4 or 5 damage on this, it's still effectively just a 4-speed move, right? Like, unless you're just putting it for absolutely free. Maybe if you're playing like a full flip everything tribal deck on like the earth symbol, that flip cost is going to actually become really annoying, maybe make it unblockable. There's like cute things you can do with this card, but overall, if you're not Muscular, I don't think that Double Overhead is going to pull much more weight in your deck than it would any other card if you can already damage pump your stuff for free. That's something that kind of plagues all of the ultra rares in this set, to be honest. A lot of them are very like, this is solid, but in this new set 4 character, it's very good. But for the most part, the ultra rares are very tailored towards functioning at best in these new characters kits and only decently outside of them. So it honestly makes a list like this kind of hard to put together. Next up, let's look at Spinner's ultra rare, and that's the Really Big Sword. I'm also going to put this one down here in the C tier. I think, to be fair, this one is a little more flexible, right? Like, you're going to be able to pick up a weapon from your discard pile when this is full locked, no matter who you are. Now, granted, the bonus to the powerful is really only good in a few characters, guys, like Spinner, like Momo, decks playing things like Capture Net. There are definitely ways to do stuff with that increased powerful, but it's a little bit harder than it is to turn on something like Blue Flame Flicker or Razor Deluge. And I think the big thing here is that I don't think the benefit outside of that is even really worth it. This is just a move that you throw down. It gets gets fully blocked, it clears itself, and then you pick another one up, which for a 2-check, I just don't think is quite enough to really pull its weight. If it maybe had a little bit more speed on it so that there were at least instances where this attack that my rival is forced to block actually cost them a little bit more to block would be really nice. But for the most part, you kind of just get this out of the way and then it turns into something else, which, yeah, when you're picking up things like Blood Moon Rendings that are going to win you the game, it's going to feel great, but it's not going to feel as great when you check that 2, and I just don't think that 2-check tax really pulls its weight in a card like this. I am Levi, I am known baby man, the most feared 2-check, 1-check gamer ever, but even with my personal bias aside, I don't think this card pulls its 2-check weight at all. Next, let's take a look at one of Shigaraki's 2 ultra rares, the Decaying Palm Slam. I think this card is quite strong. I'm gonna put it up here in the A tier. It is certainly a big, honest 6 diff, but if they check bad on the second enhance, it is gonna clear itself, and it's got powerful, it's got 7 damage, it is a low attack, and it's effectively got like slightly worse stun 3, which is still a massive impact play. This card's just really good. I think it's gonna provide some much needed damage buffs to all 3 of the symbols it's in. This is a card that just messes up people's lives, and I think we're gonna see a lot of death decks and a lot of order decks closing out tons of games with this card in the set 4 format. Now let's move our way into Shigaraki's other ultra rare, Vile Seizing. Can I be as kind to this card as Decaying Palm Slam? No, I can't. I'm gonna be even kinder. This is an S tier card right here, an absolute staple. It is a 3 high for 4 with a 1 high block breaker 1, a near game ending deadlock, and it's either gonna say stun 2 or become a cantrip that's 6 damage. This card is just straight up fantastic. Vile Season is so good. It's got a Fury keyword as well, which is very relevant for the death symbol and for the evil symbol that it's on. And in general, even if you're not one of those packages on these symbols, they would all play this card no matter what. This is just one of the best generic cantrips or setup moves in the game right now. It feels like a balanced back alley haymaker in sorts, which is still very strong. It just does a ton of very good things. There's not much more to say about Vile Seizing. You just put it in your decks, guys. Next one we're going to look at is twice as ultra rare, and that's Double Trouble. I feel very similarly about this as I do Dignified Display. It's just a pretty decent card overall. Obviously, if you're twice, you'll be able to echo with your characters, and that is sometimes going to be very relevant. Overall, though, it's a 2 mid for 5 2 times with stun 1, and you get to filter cards. It's a very handy little piece. It's never really going to blow you away, but I do think that it's going to help your attack lineups flow quite nicely. I think at the end of the day, no matter like what your card is doing, as long as it's decent, just the fact that like you have Echo puts you as a solid enough card in your own right. Just, hey, this card is just going to come at you twice. It doesn't really matter what it's doing. Next, we're going to start taking a look at the ultra rare assets of this set, and the first one is the League of Villains. I think this card is very good, guys. Going into the A tier for me, I think this card is going to get registered in a ton of decks. I think this is a insane piece for the Chaos symbol to have obtained in this set. It's going to put in a lot of work on both Death and Evil as well. Just an on-demand Night Watch every single turn cycle is very good, and being able to punish those like really powerful, repeatable, playable while committed abilities, things like basic training deadlocks can't mess you up. This card is just very solid. It's flat out going to end the game against some decks, like decks that just can't handle a certain enhance being canceled every turn, or just going to absolutely fold to it in the same way that some decks just can't fight guys like Todoroki 1, right? This card just absolutely pulls its weight as a 4 difficulty asset. Now, one that I don't think really pulls its weight as a 4 difficulty asset is the Top Pro Heroes. I'm going to put this one into the C tier, probably somewhere in the middle right here. I think this card is okay. Removing a keyword is not as relevant against certain decks. Like, obviously, something like League of Villains is very generic. Just cancel and enhance is great. This, removing a keyword is going to mess with a lot of decks, but at the end of the day, it is going to be pretty dead weight in certain matchups, so it's a bit more of a sideboard card. I think we're going to see it a little bit less. It's not necessarily an auto include, and the bottom enhance is really only going to find use in certain decks that want to play really long games or just turbo through the deck fast. Very decent sideboard piece, but I don't think that we'll see much of it, so it's going in the C tier. And now, meeting them right in the middle is the Young Heroes asset. I think this one is like a little bit of A tier and a little bit of C tier, so we'll stick it right inside of the B tier. I think this card is okay. The response to stop a damage buff is going to be really relevant sometimes, but at the end of the day, just being able to say, I'm going to commit one of your things every turn cycle is really nice. It's not quite as good as something like Class Lineup that gets to do it during both turns. Obviously, the your turn only part is the real big balancing factor of this, So if you're a set 3 character, you're not going to look at this card, but if you're not, you do get to look at this card. And I think that some people are going to look at this card, and if they can afford just the, hey, I'm not really playing any actions, not really playing any assets, I'm not really playing any 3 foundations, so I can basically, if your deck is in a spot where it's fine to just slot in a 4 difficulty asset, this is probably the first generic one that I'm going to look towards on those 3 symbols. Next up, we have some back page ultra rares, the first of which is going to be Chainsaw Nomu. I think this card is just okay, probably sits somewhere in the middle of C tier. A 4 mid for 5 flash that does really cool on discard things if it hits is nice. There are some really interesting ways to interact with this card. It is a weapon, which is also pretty nice. Overall, the card is just really decent, but I think that most decks are going to find other things that they want to be doing a little bit more than Chainsaw Nomu. Next up, let's take a look at Dark Shadow Berserk, a card that seeks to make ally decks a thing. And I think for now, this card is not really going to do that. This is actually going to be my first D tier pick. I think this card is just very okay. Like, it sure is a 3 mid for 7 that essentially has EX to however many allies you can rip off the top, which, like, sometimes this is going to get like 5 or 6 speed, and yeah, it's going to be a very fast, very high damage mid attack. It's got a 0 low block. It's got a really cool card pull response. Those are all nice things stacking on top of each other. But again, when it comes to pulling the 2-check tax, I'm really not sure that this card just quite does it. If you're really committing to the whole ally deck with things like the new Plus Ultra card, this is obviously going to be something that you have to include, and it's going to be an integral part of your strategy. But I do think that it really asks you a lot to make this your strategy. But I could be totally wrong on that. I might get hit by freaking 10 mids for 7 out of nowhere because these full ally decks are just like going super duper crazy. But for now, upon first impressions, this card is pretty underwhelming for me. Next, let's look at Justice Rush. Justice Rush is actually gonna be another D tier pick for me. I'm not a big Justice Rush gamer, guys. I think the fact that it gets damage is like only relevant when you're actually able to get that EX online. And don't get me wrong, EX4 is very cool. That's a very epic and gaming number, but overall, I just don't think that it does enough as like a big 5 difficulty attack. It's got a really sweet deadlock for sure. It's got a very sweet deadlock, but I think that maybe if it had more relevant keywords, right? If it had things like punch, but charge and fury just don't really do much for this card on these symbols. Those packages don't really exist over there, so I just don't think that you're gonna see a lot of this card get played. I think there are gonna be decks out there that are like a really good pick for this card, and you're going to see it pull a ton of weight in those individual decks, but I just think that those are going to be few and far between, and that we're not going to see a whole lot of Justice Rush. Next up, let's look at Toga's other ultra rare, which is actually on Hatsume Mei symbols, amusingly enough. This is Needle Stab. Needle Stab, I think, is pretty solid. Gonna probably put it like somewhere around here. I think it's just like a really well statted, like it's got 5 speed, it's got a 2 low block, it's got that nice weapon keyword, which is pretty relevant for all 3 of those symbols in some niche ways, and overall it's just super flexible, right? It can either be like a 5 high for 9, you can give speed to the next, lead it into something like a cannon blast, you can just throw your whole hand away for a bunch of momentum that I'm sure if you're doing that, there's something in your deck that can take full advantage of this. It's just a really nice versatile piece that I think a lot of decks are probably going to include as like a cute 1 or 2 of that, like, hey, if I find this at the right time, it's gonna pull some serious impact. And then our final ultra rare here is Resolute Rushdown, and I think this card is also pretty lame. It's gonna go down here in the D tier for me. I think we're gonna see a little bit more of it than we should, because people are just gonna see this and be like, yo, freaking 5 high for 6 2 times, and then they'll actually start playing it and have to play like on a 6 and on a 6, and then the card's just awkward, right? Because you're either you want to play it later on in the chain to get use of the enhance, but then you're trying to echo it as like a 7 or a 8, and that feels very bad. But then if you open it, unless you're like Midoriya 1, it's gonna be hard to empty your hand on your first attack, or even on your second attack after you echo it. You're gonna have to really hardcore commit to this card if you want to take full advantage of it inside of your deck, and I just don't think that that is really worth it for what it's bringing to the table. I think it's one of the more underwhelming cards of the set, especially as an ultra rare, man. And there you have it, guys. That's gonna be my fully compiled tier list of set 4 League of Villains ultra rares. Overall, this was probably the weirdest of the 4 sets to rank, just because so many of these ultra rares, like we said earlier, are really tailored towards their specific new characters kits, and outside of of them only pull like decent value, so it was kind of hard to evaluate a ton of them, but I did the best I could. And of course, as always, these are just my first impressions and my opinions. So you might have very, very different perspectives on these. You might have very, very different opinions on them. Either way, I am eager to discuss those things and the placements of the cards down there in the comment section below. So please leave me some feedback down there if you can. And if you did enjoy the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button as well. And if you want even more content like this, you can hit the subscribe button to get all of my MHA content into your news feed. Not to mention, if you want to go the extra mile, you can also hit the join button down there. Join the Alliteration Nation as a channel member. Get yourself a cool little badge next to your name, priority response on your videos, comments, and of course, very, very cool emotes to use for when I stream on YouTube. And if you want to forever cement yourself as part of the channel and commission certain types of videos for me, I've got my Patreon down there too, which you can check out. It's going to have a ton of different video tiers that all let you decide what types of videos I make in some way, shape, or form, and have some interactive one-on-one experiences with me. So if any of that sounds cool, guys, I'm going to have it all linked down below in the description and in the pinned comment section if you want to check it out. I would really, really appreciate it. But above all else, I just appreciate you making it to the end of this video right here. I really am grateful. That's all the time I've got for today though, but I super duper hope that I can see you in the next video tomorrow.